We are Christina,
Oneida,
Alicia,
Colleen.
Welcome to 4NPs Podcast.
This is a podcast by 4NPs. 4NPs, advanced practice nurses, students, and anyone interested in the medical arts.
That's the number 4 NPS podcast.
If you have a topic you'd like to see covered, please feel free to email us at 4npspodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us through our social media.
Hi there. On today's episode, the 4NPs share some wine and reflect on our favorite interviewees from season 1.
So my favorite episode was Lauren's.
Lauren.
For many reasons. So first of all, because she was our first live YouTube, and I think our only live YouTube, right? Because we haven't had any other
so far
in our first season, and we'll go over that later. I love that she knew from a young age that she wanted to be a nurse practitioner. I think a lot of nurse practitioners that we've talked to over the year weren't sure what they wanted to do. I know I didn't know what I wanted to do. And just to be that young and know what you want to be, I think that is just so special. And then going forward and just everything that she's done is just very impressive. I love that. And first of all, she was just so friendly and kind and just like, I loved her accent. I thought she was just amazing. I was impressed that she completed her nurse practitioner so quickly in 3 years while working full time. It took me 6 years. And I think even I was working part-time, but anyways, some people go faster, and it's very impressive. And that she was basically recruited by the ER doctors because she's that good, because they saw how great she was and how she was with the patients, and they just had that faith in her to ask them to come and work with her. I think that's very impressive. And that she was able to transition from being a registered nurse to a nurse practitioner in the same ER, even though she was, she had the wherewithal to say, hey, can you float me to other areas of the system so that I can work with other people, but that she was able to eventually go back and work with the people that she had worked with while she was a registered nurse, and that she was able to make it work. I think that's really great, because a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah, that said a lot about her as a person.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just like going like straight through. You guys, sorry.
No, it was great. I agree.
I think that's she just had a lot of knowledge as far as I had no idea that if you did acute care, you would also need your FNP. So that was really great information. Did you guys know that?
I did not know that. No.
Yeah. And that, oh my gosh, she started NPs of Insta. She's just shows how supportive she was of other nurse practitioners and how she wanted to kind of get to know the whole community. And I think that's just that she just did that was great. And of course her book is great and has so much information.
It looks like right here. Where is it? I just had it the other day.
Oh, I should have brought it, darn it. And then just how she advocates for her daughter, and she's trusted her mom gut, and she thank goodness. Pocket Passed. What's the whole title?
It's called Pocket Pass Nurse Practitioner by Lauren Novelak.
She's so impressive all around, just everything that she's done, so friendly, so open, and she's got this whole full life, and she just is just so open with her patients. She's so impressive. And I do have to correct myself. I think I did the intro and outro for her, and I think I said that I contest that her book is great for current nurse practitioners, and I think I attest, not contest. I just want to put that out.
I
contest, but I attest that her book is great.
Is that like a legal term?
To contest, I think would be
to contest, to go against it, right?
Yeah, you're like, no, her book sucks, but her book does not suck. Her book is great, and it's not free, but you should go out and get it.
It's free, which is so funny.
I think that And then I think maybe everybody should say something like how they feel about the person that but everybody else was great. I loved everybody that we interviewed. We learned a little bit or a lot of it from everybody that we talked to. And I think that I just learned so much from everybody. It was great.
Yeah, I agree.
I contest.
You can test.
You don't agree.
Oh, I attest.
Attestation. Your attestation, as Stephen Ferrara told us.
Not I confess.
I confess and I attest.
I confess.
It was great.
I have a lot of favorites.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick favorites.
I know. They were also great. I love Trish because she's such a strong advocate for nurse practitioners. Just everybody was great. Donna was amazing. I mean, Donna, end with Donna was for our first season. It's just so lucky.
Yeah. Oneida, who was your favorite?
So this was before Donna, but I still would say she's my favorite. I don't know. Ever since this is going to be Wendy Wright.
Oh,
yeah.
Ever since I went to the review for the exam, I was like pretty wowed with her resume and her background and all she had accomplished. Opening up her own practice and then having not just one, but then two. And then not only that, but just managing it so well, providing statistics, because that's an important factor when you are, running your own practice, not just to run it, but to know how effective it is and how you're affecting the population.
Yeah.
So, standards and it's so important, and how she holds up against her fellow, other providers in that state. So she is full of a lot of knowledge, and she was so willing to share it during her interview. Sharing everything from business basics, I thought was great. She talked about during her interview that you should never look a job down. You never know where your path will take you. Sometimes you look at a job and you think that's not where I want to be. It's not the right position for me, but it may just be a stepping stone. And I know we talk about that a lot in a lot of our different interviews with people, but it's because it's true. Like, you think you know what you want to do. You think, and some people do, a small percentage know and hit that road and don't turn back and are very happy. But a lot of people like us don't know, and that's okay too, but it's important to be open, like we talk about, and just be able to kind of accept what's put in front of us, an opportunity, right? Never look an opportunity down. What's the logo?
Addicted to opportunity.
Exactly. So it's important. And I feel like
the back of the shirt can say, never let an opportunity down. It's two sides to a shirt.
Yeah.
Two sides.
We have to talk about that and make it happen.
This episode's been inspired by Christina McCardle t-shirts.com.
Exactly.
Reasonably priced.
We approve. This
Soft
message has been approved.
That's an opportunity.
So that's our advertising partner for this episode. So if anybody needs a t-shirt, please reach out to 4npspodcast.com and Christina will make you a t-shirt.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes.
But she was great in so many ways. And even she talked about running a successful business, because it can't be successful if you're not pretty strict about your guidelines and about how you manage your NPs and what roles they have, and really be honing in on that and making the best for them too, because it wasn't just about her and her business, it was about the community and who worked for her, and making sure that they were taken care of as well, and that they felt like they were part of that group. So I felt like she just provided a lot of insight and support for us. And
I thought she was totally badass. I mean, she talked a lot about, or what I pulled out of her story was that she just kept pushing forward. She just kept moving forward. She hit a ton of hurdles and she just kept moving past them. And she even said herself that she didn't, maybe things weren't always done the right way, but she just kind of kept working and maybe she had to make corrections and fix things, which is like, sometimes in business, that's how it works. It's like you're moving forward and you learn a lot of new things, but she didn't take no for an answer, it sounds like. And I think that was really, she had this belief that she could do it. One of the other things I really got from her, and this is just kind of regressing a little bit, but she came from nothing. She literally came from nothing.
That's right.
Right.
And this woman was so smart and so driven and just so really had such a great vision. She's so visionary. And, but I love that. I love, like you said, Oneida, like she was so willing to share that.
Right.
That's awesome. That's what we hope for. I think that's what we're all looking for on this podcast, is that we want that. We're sharing ourselves, and we want other people to share themselves, to show people that, take it down a couple notches. Like, it's okay. People are going to make mistakes, and just keep pushing, just keep driving. Obviously we're driven if you got yourself through nursing school and then nurse practitioner school.
But with that being said too, like she was driven, she was all of those things, but she was also focused, right? And she, didn't allow her circumstances and the situations and people around her to like veer her off her path, like there were still protocols and things she had to follow, and she was strict about that.
Yep, she was. Yeah. And then she's just so supportive of nurse practitioners.
I love, there's a common thread between her and Donna, that an opportunity presented itself to them, and they like took it and they ran with it, and they made like successful businesses. That's so impressive that because everybody has imposter syndrome, and it's just like we were talking, Colleen and I, about like how it can be paralyzing to have imposter syndrome, and they got beyond it, and they were able to make these wonderful businesses. It's just so impressive.
Yeah.
And the first time may be intimidating, and like you're like, I can't do this, but boy, after you've accomplished it, you're like, who are you? Right. I know who I am, and that's what's important. That's the important lesson.
But it's even from both of them, you mentioned Donna and Wendy, it's like it took them time to grow in that. Like, it's like Wendy, I think said, not Wendy, but Donna, she was talking about, people saying, well, I wasn't born with the business gene, or I wasn't born with this. And it's like, it's not that. It's a matter of, there's things that you like to do and things that you may have an affinity for, or something you're gifted at or have a passion for. And it's just something that that feels right, like the next right thing to do. And you just go with it, but you learn. And like Wendy saying, like, okay, she was doing this and she found out she was doing it wrong. And it's like, you can't beat yourself up about making mistakes or doing something wrong and feeling like, oh, that's it, I'm a failure. But it's just, convincing ourselves that it's okay to make a mistake. But sometimes, we don't want to look stupid in front of other people. Right. We want to look like we've got it all together. And like, but that comes with so much time, because even talking to so many of the people that we've interviewed, they give such this air of confidence and security, like this, just like they know what they're. However, even for them, like they probably admit, if they were plucked up out of what they know and doing something else, if they felt like that chapter was over, they'd probably be starting all over again and feel the same, stumbling blocks. But it is encouraging to hear people talk about those places where they've been and where it's brought them and the doors it's opened for them, because it's the same for everybody. Like none of us are like, oh, we've got it all together. None of us do. We're just kind of wanting to do the best that we can.
Yeah. And like you said, the time that it took, I think that's another theme we heard throughout. It's in our own stories also, the time it took to do things, but we did hear that from these people who are, much further up up the ladder than we are, but it took time. It takes time. And that's like a hard thing to remind yourself. I think we get in the mind. I know I get in the mind frame of like, I want it now. I want it now. I want it now. I don't wait. I'm not patient. I don't want to wait for it.
Right.
But you have to, like, there's steps to get there. There's things that have to unfold, and you don't know. We don't know what's going to unfold in front of us, but saying yes, which is also something we heard from Wendy Wright and from Donna, hell yes, right? They're saying yes to things. And
Yeah.
Christine and I have definitely talked about that too. Like,
Mhm.
just say yes. You got to just say yes and be like, okay, I'll figure it out when I get there. And that's hard to learn. We're anxious, we're fearful, we're afraid to make mistakes. But if you can just like be like, I'm going to just say yes and I'm going to take it as it comes. And, if it's not meant for me or not right for me, I'm going to make another decision. I'm going to go a different direction. And if it is, then hey, that's great. And maybe it's just a piece of the story. Maybe it's just something that I needed to take this step, because if I didn't take this step over here, then I'm never going to get over there.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Kind
who
of
does-
like we have to have faith in ourselves, and that's
it's hard, but
yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
Right. How do we get there?
Right.
Still don't know the
Exactly.
answer to that totally, but working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alicia. You're next.
What was your favorite episode?
Alicia.
I like the way you said that.
You're up.
That was very cute. It reminded me of like a cartoon character.
Am I the only one drinking here?
No, hello. I almost finished. Well, there
All
wasn't
right.
a whole bottle, but
All right.
Oh, no wonder why you're
My
slurring your
bottle
speech.
is, I don't know if you can see it there.
nice. I didn't have.
Yeah.
Did you have a full bottle?
I did. That was a brand new
Nice.
bottle. I went out and bought. That's why I was late. I bought it.
Oh, you're in your mega glass. I love it.
Continuing with what we were just talking about, there was something that, and this will segue into me going into the burnout coach, Erica Dorn. She talked about you have good days and you have bad days wherever you are. Like you could be in whatever you're doing and it's just, you have those days, but so one of my what I love about this whole thing when we decided to do our favorite episode is that when we each kind of like put in the pot, like, okay, who do we want to talk about? Like all four of us like really picked, like some of us overlaps, like we picked the
Yeah.
same people really. I mean, but we had to narrow it down to 4 people because everybody was great. Everybody really had so much, but just to kind of pick where we like gleaned the most, or just that stood out the most to us. So Erica Dorn is the one I chose, and she's the burned out NP. She's a burned out. Well, that's the name of her Instagram is the burned out NP, but
Sounds
she's
so
a
funny.
burnout coach.
She's just burnt out. That's it.
She's the burned out one.
Yeah.
But she addresses, nurses and getting to places in their careers, which I have been in, where you just question why you became a nurse, why you're even doing what you're doing, where you're going through the motions, where you just feel like this sense of dread. She talked about sense of dread going to work and like, how do you know you're burned out? Like where you no longer have that enjoyment. I mean, it's a hard job, but you usually have like a why, like you usually keep that, like, the why of what you're doing. But she talked about a few things in particular, which I thought were interesting, which was feeling completely detached from yourself or feeling like a loss of compassion or empathy. You just have kind of like that compassion fatigue, right? So she just talked about ways to avoid that and recognizing some of those things. So some of the things that stood out, like I took some notes here. So she was talking about how not every day is going to be perfect, and like so you can't be afraid to take time for yourself, like to know yourself. Like so when you're having one of those days, it's just kind of like, okay, what do I need to do here? Like I was extra stressed today, I was really angry, I kind of snapped at that person. Like know yourself. Okay, like I'm reaching my edge now, like what do I need to do? And so just taking time, and how we learned even from our recent interview, like taking time for yourself is a matter of self-respect. This is not something to feel guilty about or feel like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, or I hate that whole guilt complex. Where does that come from? It's so stupid. but we need that mentally, and like we can't be everywhere and do everything for everyone every time of the day, and it's okay to say no. So we were talking about saying yes and just say yes, but there's kind of like that boundary, like up to what point is it like I can no longer say yes to these things. So I think being a yes person is kind of like something that I kind of have known about myself as well, like wanting to just be people pleaser, wanting to please and make people happy and wanting to help and wanting to make sure things get done. And if I can pitch in and if I can do it, I'll do it, even if it's detrimental to myself. And that's not healthy. But
Right.
so, she talked about initially, like when you're going for a job and you're looking at things like not being afraid during the interview to ask, how happy are the MPs that work here? She mentioned that in her podcast, in our interview with her, asking, how do the NPs manage their work-life balance that are here, and so that was one of the things that stood out to me. Two was realizing that we are in control of our own happiness. So when we're letting ourselves go to the point of we're running, we're doing this, and we've got to keep going, we're like on that hamster wheel with no sight of getting off. It's kind of like, hey, I'm actually the hamster in control of this wheel. I can actually stop this crazy thing. But sometimes you feel like you can't. You feel like it's just out of control, but it's saying, wait a minute, you've realizing I am in control of my happiness, whatever that looks like for you. So like there are people that are like true work addicts and workaholics, and they love to work and they love to do the next thing, but not for most people. You need that time. So doing self-care, putting your own needs first. So, identifying what those needs are, creating a plan, setting boundaries, having a better mindset, like changing mindsets, like, having positive attitudes, thinking of, what things you're grateful for. So gratitude journals, so she went into like what she does as far as like her program. She's got like a 4-week program that she does with some of her clients, just to hold people accountable that they're taking that time out when they're supposed to. But like things like walking and exercise, having home time, having family connections, prioritizing your time. And she mentioned journaling, which is great. And then like one of the last things that I also kind of noted from our interview with her was just rediscovering your purpose. So when you're in a place where you feel like you're kind of stunted, or you feel like, I think I've reached the end of myself in this position or in this role or in this work setting or this environment. And it's kind of like taking time out to just rediscover, why you went into nursing in the first place. Because I was in a sad place to actually think I'm going to quit nursing. I'd rather learn how to sew or work in I mean, I was just like, I'll be a barista. Like I wanted to totally like, and like how Donna was when she got the point of burning out, that she wanted to get on the plane and fly to Bali and never come back, because it just got to that point. And so you don't want to get there. So rediscovering your purpose, why you went into healthcare, not allowing yourself to become so detached that you're just totally numb to everything that you're doing. And so, yeah. So, I mean, she talked about toxic environments, and when like, at some point feeling free to go to your management, because if it is a toxic environment, to say, hey, have you thought about these things that may be happening, or whether it's not a toxic environment or just like workflow or processes, just being able to go and talk to your manager. Sometimes there's solutions that you can bring to them that, if you're in a burnt out situation that management hasn't realized, this could promote better job satisfaction for not only you, or just for everyone that's employed there. So like feeling like you have a voice, I guess, and going to management, because I've never really thought of that, like, just to say, hey, what, can we talk, because these are some things that are going on the clinical side that you may not be seeing. But I think if we can change some of these things, it would reduce some of the burnout and job fatigue that we're experiencing, and why nurses want to leave the field, because we're awesome people, but nurses have feelings too.
Yeah.
Now I'm going down. I mean, no, we hurt too, and we need care too, and we need someone to care for us as well. So yeah, that was a very impactful episode for me.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that too, like, I don't know, for me personally, when I get to that point, Alicia, like you're saying, where I'm just like kind of fried, and my problem is that I internalize so much and I push stuff down so much that it gets really far before I say anything. And then by the time that I'm like ready to say, hey, this is not okay and I'm not happy, and that I'm like so emotionally wrapped up in it, I find it really hard, and maybe this is just an immaturity on my part, or this is just a flaw in my personality or whatever. I'm so spastic. I can't say that in a nice way. Like I'm now I'm reeling because I have been stressed and like this has been going on for so long and I'm just not happy. And I've had that happen to me once or twice in my life where I was just miserable. Honestly, I would question to myself, like, how are the people who are working with me? I don't know how they're functioning around me because I am so miserable right now. I don't even know how to get out of this.
Yeah.
And if I go to my manager to say to them, think something needs to change here, it's not going to come out right because I'm so in my head swirling around.
Yeah.
In fact, this just happened to me at my job, my regular job, where I had like and I'm never like that. I'm not a drama girl. I'm not a person who complains a whole lot. I do my job and I just kind of get through the day. But I was like feeling so burnt out that I actually had a little bit of a breakdown with my manager and was like, I'm out. I can't do this. Like it's too much.
Yeah,
And
she talked about some of that too, just about having open and honest conversations and how a lot of the times we are not having that because we're intimidated by confrontation. So we don't want to confront these things. So we're allowing them to go on longer. And then those things are kind of stewing and brewing. And then it's just like just a hot pot ready to blow. So it's kind of like going back to what she was talking about, knowing yourself and like being in that position, think something's not right. It doesn't feel right. Because sometimes we can just dismiss that feeling and be like, okay, you know what, tomorrow's another day. I'm just going to do better. But like when you've gone on that road for long enough, it's like, okay, how do I confront it? Even writing down, like where she talks about writing down a plan, even if it's a plan to have a talk with my manager, how should I write this down so I don't come off like I'm an emotional basket case because I've let this go on and now I'm just angry and I hate everybody here.
That's what just happened. I was just in that position where it didn't go well because I didn't.
I have too. Yeah, with a surgeon in an OR, and then I could have gotten fired actually, but I remember that.
It's an awful place to be. And Erica just seemed to have her head really well wrapped around that. She did. She was a pretty cool episode.
I think it's important to realize that we have something worth saying. Sometimes we just down it. Oh, that's silly. And it's probably just me. But sometimes you could be the person that says and speaks the thing that everybody else is feeling. But if you can do it in a way and communicate it appropriately, you can make like serious changes like for yourself and be happier at work. And then other people would be like, wow, like, I'm so glad you said that and spoke up,
Yeah.
But it's valuing what you have to say as a person too. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we get there?
I think, I go back to like when I was in primary care and like I was feeling like at a point where I was like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. And I was like, okay, how do I handle this? Because normally I would push it down and say, okay, I'm just going to do it because I'm either too afraid or don't want to approach it. I don't want the confrontation. I don't know how it's going to be received. Right. So I'll just deal with it until I just can't anymore. Right. And that's the wrong approach because I've done that many times and it doesn't end well. Never does. So I wanted to change that and I didn't want to be that way. So I would like write myself like, okay, how am I going to approach this? How am I going to present it? So I was like writing emails, but not sending them like, okay, this is totally inappropriate. Not
That's
really
good.
But I was like, okay, this is not what I want to say. I would mull it over and then I'd get rid of it. Okay, let me rewrite this the next day or something. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, this is okay. This is acceptable. I feel comfortable approaching it this way. And I think it's going to be received. It shouldn't be, there's nothing negative in it. It's the truth. And I'm approaching it in a, like a
non-emotional.
Exactly.
That's a great idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then I would send the email and then that's when I was having to deal with like the decrease in patients because I was like, I can't handle all of this plus everything else. So yeah.
That's emotional maturity too, because you don't want to be just exploding on everything. But I think I've also just on what you were saying, Oneida, like I've also heard like, yeah, write everything out you're feeling, get it out. And then, okay, you can edit, take out some stuff. It's like, okay, no, I can't talk. I can't say
Take the
that.
emotion
But then
out, right?
even have a trusted colleague say, hey, can you just look at this with me? And like, do you think this is something I should send? Or just who kind of knows you and knows your heart and knows what you're trying to say, because then they could say, you know what, when you say that, you sound like, whatever, and reword it. But I mean, not so much where you're not going to get your point across, but yeah.
Exactly. And that's a good point, Alicia, because I did that other NP that I was working with. I had said, listen, this is what I'm feeling. And she's like, oh my gosh, you should definitely approach it. And this is who you should speak to. Because who I was going to speak to initially was the manager. And she's like, that's not who you need to direct your concerns to. She, not to say she's nobody, but that's not
Yeah.
who you answer to. And then I
Right.
was like, oh my gosh, like light bulb, like, of course, you're absolutely right. Like, I'm in a
Mhm.
different position now and I need to act appropriately, right? And let my concerns be known to the right person directly. And it's not like I was breaking the chain of command or anything, because I wasn't. But you're right, like making sure maybe you run it by somebody who you feel like a trusted colleague, that it's going to
Yeah.
give you truthful but insightful and supportive information.
Yeah.
My problem is I'm totally paranoid and don't trust anybody. So
You're your own worst enemy.
I am, but
Give it to Roy.
yeah, Roy's good. He's good.
You'll
My
have her
daughter
fired
Emma-
and before she even approaches the person she
My daughter Emma, she proofs a lot of my stuff now. So she's an excellent writer. She's totally
That's
gifted
good.
writer.
Yeah.
And when I have like crazy things, I like if I want to write an email like Onaida's saying, where I just want to just say it, like I need to just get it out, I will email it to Emma and say, can you take this down like bunch of nonsense? Like, how can I say this professionally and get my point across without the emotion that's behind it? The angry typing.
That's hard though. That's so hard to take the emotion out of it.
It is hard to take the emotion out. I've been pretty good just because my jobs have always been very like administrative and business side, but there are times when I just can't. I recently really just had an issue with a boss who I love. She's awesome, and I don't know why she kind of stirs up the emotional side of me, but I had like a breakdown with her like a week ago, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. And I'm not even working as a nurse practitioner in that job. I'm just doing research stuff, but it was like, it's the same concept of, I'm just fried. I cannot give, I have no more to give.
Right.
So something's gotta change.
Right.
Yeah.
As far as the Erica episode, I just liked her whole overall message that it's okay to take time for yourself. And just like Donna also in her episode said, it's not selfishness, it's self-respect.
I love
Being
that.
able to take time for yourself, because at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself, how can you take care of other
Anybody.
people? So I just loved Erica's whole message.
Yeah, she had a great message. I love that we're naturally and organically integrating Donna Cardillo's episode into this episode, because I think
Go back and watch it. It's great. I mean, watch it, listen to it.
watch or listen to it. Yeah.
And then also I don't know if it was in her episode, but I hear her voice, Erica, saying, give yourself grace. Like, I feel like at some point she said self grace, because I think that's such an important message.
It is. We never really do that.
Yeah.
We're always so hard on ourselves. And
I also hear Alicia telling me that.
yeah.
Give it. Yeah. I mean, and I think at the end of everything that she talked about, it was just, it's okay now if you've tried to have those conversations and been open and you've been, given intelligent feedback on what's going on, and they don't want to change, or there's nothing and they don't care. Like, it's okay to even walk away from that place. But I think, and say, okay, this place isn't for me, and maybe I'm not for you. Like, we kind of always want to be like accepted and like, okay, this is working and we're doing a good job and they like us and we're productive. And then it's just like, but maybe this just isn't a good fit anymore for either of us. And so it's just okay to say, I can move on. I've stayed way too long at a job that I like years that what was I doing? I was like a walking zombie. And why? It was just, yeah, afraid to speak up, afraid to know, like, I don't deserve this and I don't want to do this anymore, but I don't know what else to do. And so I'm just going to keep going and going, and maybe it'll get better, maybe it'll get better. But things never really did change. And that was just the nature of that environment. And so, and that was never going to change. So either I was going to change and be adaptable to that, but at some point I realized I wasn't.
Right.
And yeah, it just wasn't for me. And so it was just, okay, it's time to go. And I remember knowing, like, I knew it's time to go. Yeah.
Right.
And I felt ready. Like, I knew that it was
Mhm.
time. It was time to spread my wings and fly and
Right.
move on to the next place where I could be of value and feel appreciated and feel
Mhm.
like, you know and it yeah, you can't be afraid to stretch yourself, which we've heard from so many of. You just don't know until you get into that next position, that, like, you may absolutely love it and you may absolutely hate it, but it's just, you're never going to know unless you just take the
Right.
chance, take the
Right.
leap. And it's
Yeah.
okay to feel like, okay, it's not being a failure if you don't like it. It's
Right.
just I didn't like this, and this didn't fit, and I don't want to do it. And
And that's definitely a theme we heard from a lot of the nurses that we interviewed, was that, we had a lot of nurses that did a lot of different things in their life or in their careers, and they did this for a little while, and it didn't really suit them, or it didn't fulfill, or it fulfilled a need for a time, and then they just kind of moved on to something else. And we're in the beginning middle part of that. We're not, at the later side of our career where we could go back and reflect on that. But the truth of the matter is that there are going to be times when we try something and that doesn't, it suits us, or we try something, it suits us for a while, and then our needs change, and then we have to move on to the next thing. It's not like it used to be. I think Donna said that, it's not like it used to be where somebody gets in a job and they're in there for 20, 30 years. That's more unusual these days.
Right.
It's more common to try a job for a year or 2 years, even to a couple months, whatever it is, you get your experience, or it's a stepping stone to another place, or there's something more beyond that is where you land. And those are the people that are impressing us. And those are the people that are bringing on to show other nurse practitioners, hey, you don't have to stay in this job for the whole, maybe you want to, and that's great, good for you. But the truth is, you don't really have to.
But if it's not right for you, move on.
Move on. Yep. Don't let the fear get in your way.
Right.
Yeah.
Colleen, you're up.
I contest.
So so like you guys, I think
I love that word now.
Any listeners listening to this can hear our love for Donna Cardillo. I think we all four share that. That was an unexpected, perfectly timed episode for us all, because we're all in kind of a state of transition right now. And I think Donna just said a lot of things that really kind of resonated with all four of us. So she definitely, it's cool to hear you guys all, like, I think all of us have brought in something from the Donna episode. My favorite episode was, I love them all. I really do. It was hard to pick a favorite, but the one that really I enjoyed a lot and unexpectedly, I think, was Alex Yacco. So
Yeah.
Alex was episode 20, and she's a urology NP. And she was literally a pisser. she was so much fun to talk to. She was so funny and so open and honest about where she came from and what she's been through. And she did a lot of, she advocates for herself, and she talked about how she thought she was limiting herself at the beginning of her career. And she really suffered in her first year with imposter syndrome, which I think that all of us kind of identified with a bit. I know I certainly did. I feel like I have that all the time. Almost seems like it never leaves. She had a hard time transitioning from her RN to provider role, and learning how to accept the respect as a provider. She struggled to make that transition, and she talked a lot about that. She had to work with the PAs and practice staff navigating being the first NP and educating on what an NP does and her contribution to the team. I really liked that she talked about that, because there is a lot of education as a nurse practitioner. I feel like I am constantly explaining. I'm not even working as a nurse practitioner. I feel like I'm constantly explaining what a nurse practitioner is. People just don't really get it. It's still it's been around for a long time, but people just don't know them. Even when I was doing clinicals in school, people would call the nurse practitioners that I worked with doctor. They're not doctors and nurse practitioners, and they provide a service in their own right, but it's a little different. So I guess that's going to be part of what we do always, is just explaining that. And I know Alex talked a lot about that. She said it took a lot of open conversation and discussions around her role, and she used her voice and continues to do that to establish trust, that physicians would learn to refer to her, to establish herself in her own role. She did talk about one of the physicians that she worked with was very supportive of her, and really, and this is so nice to hear, and we hope that every nurse practitioner experiences this. She had a physician who would literally say to his patients, well, you're not going to get an appointment with me. Like, you're going to see my nurse practitioner, and basically that's it. Like, she's perfectly capable. He completely had her back, and who doesn't want that? I know I want that. That's important.
Absolutely.
To me. Yeah. She talked about urology, which has always been one of those interesting specialties to me. That is definitely on my list of, like, I have a couple of things that I go, if I saw a job come up in this, I think I would really like that particular system. And urology is just one of those to me. I've always found it really interesting. And I think the nurse practitioners who work in that do a lot of procedures, which I like the idea of that. So she said she felt the same way. Urology found her, and she discovered it when she was an OR nurse, and that kind of opened the door for her to specialize. And I think, Alicia, she knew you, right? I think you brought Alex to us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just loved her. I thought she was so funny and so honest, and I loved listening to her talk, and she talked a lot about her background and her struggles. She learned pretty early on what she didn't want, and I think I really admired that about her. I think that's really important, and it's something that we all forget, is to kind of say what you don't want. I know that I don't want this,
Right.
You could say yes to those other things, but to set that boundary, we were talking about that a little bit earlier on today, like to set the boundary of, I know I don't want that, so I'm not going to go any further. I just had this conversation with a headhunter who, I just told her something I didn't want, and she brought it to my attention and said, well, this is what they're saying. And I said, I'm not going to waste my time on that, because that's not something that I want. And I think Alex really reinforced that and really kind of brought that to the forefront of my mind. She said when she had her OR experience, it taught her a lot, and she used those skills and that knowledge in a whole new way. So that adaptation of realizing that you have skills in a certain area and taking those skills and using them in another place, because now your degree and your education has brought you to a new place. It doesn't mean that we've left behind everything we've done. We're bringing experience with us, and we're bringing skills with us. And for her to really have that kind of realization that she was taking the skills that she had and owning those skills, and now she's just using them in a different way. I think that was a really great lesson. I think that we could all learn from, and really, it's just a great thing to know about yourself. It's like you said, Alicia, earlier, like knowing yourself. Erica Dorn said that, right? We need to know ourselves. I think Alex knew herself, and I think that was something that impressed me about her.
Yeah.
And her practice was mostly adults, and she said the MDs that were really supportive. I think I said that a little bit earlier. She said she learned so much all the time, and she does a lot of procedures. She has no call in her job, which was great, and she learned something every day, which is something we all say all the time. When we met with her, she was still growing in her role, and I'm sure she still is. And she talked about the confidence to transfer your knowledge into practice, to learn like the trends, conservatively following up with her patients, and learning and accepting administration time and the respect she deserves as a provider. She talked a lot about that, and that's something that all four of us definitely, Christina, you and I just had a conversation about that today. You know, when you're transferring into this role as a nurse practitioner, you're coming from an RN, the RN role is like the role of and we're all employees, but just hear me out on this.
Yeah.
We're on like the role, you're an employee. So when you're a nurse, you know exactly what your role is. You're going into your job. It's like going into a place of work, right? But now you're a provider, and we're transferring into a more of a leadership role. And now you are contributing. A nurse isn't contributing to the bottom line necessarily, but the NP is contributing to that bottom line. You got to know that. And we're not taught that in school. We're definitely not taught that. We've talked about this on the podcast also. Like, you're not taught. You are a provider. You are in a leadership role. You have a direct impact on the bottom line for that company, and you have to know that. And it demands a certain amount of respect, and it demands a mindset change. And Alex talked about that, and it kind of hit home for me. She was in the process of, when we talked to her, she was in the process of obtaining her nursing first assist, so that she could participate in surgery. And I thought that was really cool too, because she didn't just stop at being an NP. She knew exactly what she wanted to do, and she was taking those steps to get all the pieces there, even if it felt like maybe she was going backwards. She's not. Right? Because you need that nurse first assist as an NP. You can't assist in surgery in that way. And she realized that she had to go back and get this certification, and she was going to do that. So that was it. So that's why I picked her as my favorite episode. She does it all. She has a little baby and a new puppy at home, and she just was so like real. Yeah. It was such a conversation with her, and I really loved that. I felt like I got a lot out of that episode with her.
Yeah.
I love that you chose her. I feel like she has it all together. She stands up for herself. She's so supportive. Her communication is great. She speaks her mind. I love how she was able to just, go to the staff and be like, hey, this is how it is. You want me to help you? You have to help me too. I don't have those skills. Like, she needs to give a class on that. I think that she is so cool. And I have an update. Actually, a couple months ago, I meant to tell you guys, she is actually part-time now. Yeah. So I don't know, Colleen, if you want to reach out, but anyways, she's part-time, and she's actually working, I think, full-time at the Mount. She's teaching.
Is she?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Good for her.
Amazing teacher.
Yes.
Yeah. But she's so supportive. I was just texting with her the other day, and she's just so supportive. And she was like, because I was telling her what I was going through, and she's like, nothing's wrong with that. You work so hard for that degree, and you're entitled to be somewhere you're happy in. So she's just great. And I love that you picked her.
Thanks. Yeah, I was so impressed with her. She was so real and honest. And something I picked up, and this is just something I picked up from her, she had, and I probably identify with this because I have this, I think I have like a nervous energy about me. I can seem confident at times when I'm not confident at all. And think I identified with that in Alex. Like it's a very real thing where you're pushing forward and you're trying to do this in the right way. And you just kind of keep moving through. But there is like a nervousness. There was an underlying nervousness about her. And I think I really identified with it. So I think that was one of the things I really loved about her too. It made me feel like, well, you know what, she's doing this, like I could do that too. I don't have to sit back and be quiet. I can speak up and I don't know. She kind of gave me that. So I really appreciated that about her. I just loved that she was so honest.
Yeah.
And it was very cool. Yeah. Plus I love what she does. I think it's interesting. And yeah.
Yeah, I liked how she talked a little bit about that awkwardness sometimes because it is a very personal, intimate. I think you were saying that, Colleen, before. It's like it's very intimate. And I don't know, most of the urologists are males. There's not a lot of female urologists. So you're in like a predominantly male like specialty.
Mhm.
And even the clients you see, like a lot of them are, males dealing with certain problems. And so but I like how she kind of talked about just kind of getting over that and kind of like being very lighthearted about it and just like, okay, well, this is what it is. You want me to examine you? This is what I have to do,
Right.
but I like how similar to Lauren NP, she was discovered by some of the surgeons and some of the physicians that she worked with, because in the OR you're working with a lot of those, and they kind of saw her as a potential there, which when I was in that OR, I saw that because I had just started my master's, and I thought, because they're such a great group. There's a culture, like the GYNs have a certain culture, the orthopods have a certain culture, then you have the general surgeons, and then you have urology. And like everybody liked urology because they just went with the flow, right? They were just adorable, and they really respected you. And like out of all of the surgeons there were some that, that were because there's also like a breed of like older surgeons that expect, okay, these nurses are going to do what I say and in a certain way. And then there were the newer ones that realized, hey, you know what, we want to get this room turned over quickly. Hey, what can we do to help? Can we open some things? Can we do this? And that they weren't afraid, they didn't stand there with arms folded. Like they were kind of like, we support you. We understand it's a lot to get a room turned over and make sure all the instruments are there and get this done. And we're not, because some of them would blame you if things were late or if things were wrong, and you just felt so much pressure. But it's very nice that she was that she stood out to that group of urologists, and that they knew she was pursuing her nurse practitioner, and that they called her out and said, hey, we'd like to have you part of our group once you're done, like let us know. Yeah. And she was great to work with there as well, and when we were in the OR together.
Yeah.
And I'm similar to you, Colleen. Like if they were like, I look, and sometimes I specifically put in nurse practitioner urology. Like, where is it? I mean, some of them do want call. You just have to kind of look at that because there are hospital privileges. And if you are going to go into surgery, there's that little extra element for you to go ahead and do procedures. But a lot of procedures are done in the office. So, which she was explaining. So
Yeah.
that's nice.
I know Sandra Progenta is who we also interviewed, who's fantastic. And we'll definitely be talking to her again soon. She's also a urology NP, and she does some really cool procedures. Yeah. I love urology. I have a really fun, and you guys probably remember this because Alicia, definitely you were there. Do you know what I'm going to say? Do you remember this?
I don't know.
So we were with Jill Cook, somebody else that we interviewed. She was our instructor. We were at Vassar doing med surge, and she would rotate us out. She would rotate one student out to like different units, and it was my day to get rotated out, and I was down in the emergency room. The emergency room nurses ate their young, just didn't want anything to do with a student being down there. So I was laying really, really low because they were not nice. They were unapproachable. They didn't want a student. They were just annoyed. They were busy. I get it. They were busy. They didn't want us. It was annoying to have a student there. So I'm just trying
to like where they came from, and that like that's wrong.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
there are those burned out nurses that have been there for 30 years. That's why they're so mad.
Right, right.
They didn't know when it was time
They
to go.
can't let it go. Right. They can't. So anyway, on top of that, I think it was a relatively boring day. Anyway, there wasn't a lot going on in the ER. So I had to spend the whole clinical rotation. I was an undergrad and I'm spending the whole clinical rotation down there. And I hear this doctor. So I'm sitting like in this side room and this doctor comes in and I hear him going, "Oh, it sounds like it's broken. I'm going to need to bring him into surgery right away." And so, you know me.
Oh my gosh.
So do you remember the story? So I said to the doctor, I'm a nurse.
You just remembered.
I said, I'm wondering, like, you sound like you have to do an emergency surgery. I'm thinking it's like orthopedic. Somebody broke something. And he says to me, I said to him, I'd love to observe if that would be okay with you. Do you think that? And he was like, and he was so open, like, he's like, "Oh my God, I would love to have a nursing student come in and help me." And he's like, "Absolutely, you can come in and watch." He's like, I'll make sure I get permission from the family. He goes, "Have you ever seen a broken penis before?" And I go, "I'm sorry, what?" And he takes out a pad and paper and draws me a picture. And he's like, the woman would have had been riding in this position. She would have had been in this position.
Wow.
She slammed down and the penis came out and he's and I'm like, "Oh." Wow. So I'm just, trying to be professional. I'm like, okay, this surgeon, and I don't remember his name, but he was absolutely a urologist. Maybe that's why I had such a good impression of urology. This guy, it was like I was the princess with him.
Aww.
He's like, "Where's my student?" All day. "Where's my student?" He goes, "Come in here so you can see this."
And the guy's probably like,
he brings me in the OR with him. Well, first he has me go talk to the patient. So then I go talk to the patient. And of course, you can't laugh, like I'm dead. And you know me, I have the worst, dirtiest sense of humor ever. So I can't laugh. I'm being very professional. I talk to him and I'm like, I go, and I got this line from my sister-in-law because she used to say stuff to people like this, but I go to him, "Can I have a look? Can I see what it looks like?" And he's like, he goes, "You know what? I remember this patient, and he was adorable. He was so cute." He goes to me, he goes, "I'm a mechanic. And if somebody came in with a problem with their engine, I would want to take a look. So I totally get that you want to see what's going on here."
What a good guy.
It was so funny. And then he had like 6 brothers. You can imagine.
Oh my gosh.
Brothers were all coming in, making fun of him. This poor guy, it was this young couple. His wife came in. They had like 2 little babies and they were going for a quickie. And she just like stayed down.
Like, hurry up.
Oh my God. So anyway, so then the urologist takes me in the OR, and the whole time he was so attentive to me, which was it was like making me laugh because he was like, "Where's my student? Where's my student?" And I'm like, "I'm right here. He's like, "Come in here. I want you to look at this." He literally had me stand next to him in the OR. I'm all gowned up and I'm standing next to him and he's telling me everything he's doing in the surgery. To relieve the pressure of this. He had to like slice a vein. It was intense. And the anesthesiologist is laughing throughout the whole surgery because he can't believe that this happened to this poor guy. So that was a whole nother issue. Anyway, the point of the story is you get back to clinical, and remember we used to sit around the boardroom table and talk about like, what did you see in clinical today? And I walk in the room and Jill Cook's there and I go, "Nobody else needs to talk because I win the day." It's the best story ever. And she's looking at me like, "What's it?" And so I tell everybody the story. But Alicia, you were definitely Christina, you might have been on that. Were you guys in that?
No, I would remember that.
I do remember the story vaguely, or I've seen it again another time, but I do.
We were cracking up. It was just so funny. But yeah, it's urology. So
now we know why you want to go into urology.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this guy. I think I tried to track him down and I might have sent him a thank you note because he could not have been nicer.
What's his name?
so into teaching. I just know his office was like in Rhinebeck or something. He was so great. And it made this like lousy day into like this great story. It was so funny.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Just having their support. I think that has made a lot of difference. I know it has, certainly for me. Like just watching you guys go through this, I'm like, what am I doing here? And it's so funny because that phrase, not working up to your license. So when I was working in research and Northwell had taken over, and I didn't really love working for Northwell. One of the doctors that I was working with, when they were telling me basically that they were laying me off, which was fine with me because I didn't really like working for them anyway, she said to me, well, we want you to move to Long Island because we feel like having you work where you are, you're not working up to the level of your license. Now, I didn't have my NP yet. I was still an RN. But that phrase just struck me so funny. And I made fun of it for months. I was like, oh, I'm not working up to my license. Like, what? Like, you know me, I'm so sarcastic. I was like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? Like, I'm not working up to my license. My husband even knows that phrase because I have said it to him so many times because it just kept going over it and over it. And now, now I'm a nurse practitioner. So now I'm like, and I've actually heard that phrase again, and and I've heard it in other places, and I'm like, that's a thing. I'm like, that's really, how you have like some ideas in your head and stuff that doesn't make sense. And like, I don't know, for me, I make fun of it. I'm like, oh yeah, whatever, it's not working up to my license, blah, blah. But it's true. Like we have this license. We have earned it. We have worked our butts off to get it. We have sacrificed to get it. We passed the tests. We have the certification, but yet we really are not working like Alicia and I at this point, and Christina, they're past that point, but you and I, we're still kind of easing our way into it. And we haven't been working up to our license. It's a thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a process,
Yeah.
And
But
it's connected to imposter syndrome too, because you kind of still feel like, but I have this piece of paper, but it's just a piece of paper until I do something with it. Like it's just, I mean, yes, it's not to disqualify everything we've studied, everything we've worked hard for, but until you utilize it, and I mean, you're really like thrown into it, like sink or swim, and that's the truth about it. And I wasn't ready to be in that position because I was, it was still a point of transition.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that your emotional being and who you think you are and your confidence level, which is a big thing. It's funny, my daughter's in law school, you guys know this, and I've been sending Emma a ton of stuff. My daughter completely lacks confidence. She just has no confidence. I have no confidence. I did not do a good job as her mom instilling that in her. And I've been reading a lot about it, and confidence has a lot to do with it. It's like how you see yourself and your level of confidence. And there are things that I'm confident in, but for the nurse practitioner role, I don't have confidence.
I think that as a nurse, we're just so much more supported, and there's like a clear path, and this is what you do. And there's this huge support system. And then you go and you get your nurse practitioner because you feel that that's the next thing that you should do. And then you graduate. Thanks, it's like, good luck. Like,
here you go.
Thank you for listening. 4NP's podcast has a Facebook group called Nurse Business, a community created to support one another and enjoy positive ideas and thoughts. We hope you'll join us. In addition to that, for a little fun, follow us on TikTok.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel to see some clips of our live interviews and listen to past episodes. Feel free to email us with ideas for episodes, comments about our podcast, to recommend an interviewee, or if you'd like to be interviewed yourself at 4npspodcast@gmail.com. That's the number 4, 4npspodcast@gmail.com.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 4NPs Podcast. That's the number 4NPS Podcast. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast and go to our website at 4npspodcast.com for episode transcripts, resources, and more information about us.
Thanks for listening. Please join us in 2 weeks when the 4NPs whine a little more and discuss where we've been and where we're headed. You won't want to miss it. Happy 4th of July.
The information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be used in substitute for professional care by a medical provider. The information in this podcast does not represent medical or other professional advice or services. The thoughts and opinions presented on the 4NPs podcast are of the hosts and guests and do not represent those of their employers.